And I'm live. Hello, everybody. This is One here for your daily dose of crypto awareness. Today, I wanted to get on and talk about a trend I've started to notice amongst the news and some of the bigger developments. And it has a lot to do with Japan, more specifically, and China, and just the whole Asia sector, and their growing openness towards cryptocurrencies. I'm going to start off with this article I found real quick, and it talks about how Vice Ratings, more known as for rating stocks, but starting to get into cryptos, especially the last couple of years, had released a tweet just saying that they think China could potentially be one of the major crypto markets if they embrace it, which I believe is true. China has about 101 point, well, at least 1.3 billion people, something like that. I'll read this real quick. It's no longer news that Japan is at the forefront when it comes to cryptocurrency adoption. It has earned the potential honor of becoming the #1 market for cryptocurrency in the world. However, Weiss Ratings says China could be just as big, if not bigger, than Japan if it integrates it. The statement was in response to a post by Joseph Young, a renowned Hong Kong-based crypto investor, analyst, and author. And the post I took it, I got it here. He says, I strongly believe Japan will be the first major crypto market to see real mainstream adoption. Rakuten and BitCamera, the country's two biggest e-commerce retailers, have been making real efforts to push local crypto adoption. And this article again talks about these two companies and some of the moves that they've been making in China, in Japan. And I want to go into this one too much because it's a side story to me, but it speaks to the trend I'm starting to see. And in this article, they do talk about the potential in China, which I do believe is there as the trade war with the United States heats up. It's not really what they're trying to make it out. It's the global banking system that is falling apart. The Bretton Woods system that has really been established and operating mainly since the mid 40s is falling apart. And they're trying to make it like, oh, this trade war, these wars, that's why this is happening. But it's actually the system is falling apart. There's too much money, and there's just a rolling over into a new system. And I think a lot of the financial structure of the next era, whatever, is going to be based in China, Japan, Asian region, Pacific, more away from the Atlantic side of things like New York, London, all those ones, going to kind of transfer over to that. This side of the United States, maybe, but even more out Pacific, China, Japan, those areas. And it's their turn. It's even just like, if you want to talk about really, really long term, just like, say if there's like 4 or 5 families, 6, however many families you want to think run the planet or whatever. They're not all white people. It's funny that nobody ever talks about the black families because it sounds like they're like blocked out. Don't talk about that. You don't talk about that. But I think it's the more Asian-based power structures that have been around thousands and thousands of years. It's starting to roll over into their turn to manage the world systems, I suppose. And I think that's kind of what I see happening right now. And Japan, on the other hand, has been very friendly towards cryptocurrency and cryptocurrency startups. For starters, it has some of the top cryptocurrency companies. There's some of them there. What I wanted to get on was, yeah, it's not in this article. Japanese yen overtakes the U.S. dollar in Bitcoin trading. According to data from CoinHills, the Japanese yen officially overtook the USD in terms of Bitcoin trading throughout the world. I believe it was responsible for 49.1% of the entire Bitcoin trading volume in the last 24 hours of Bitcoin versus a fiat, as compared to the US dollar, which is 45.8. So it just less than a year ago. In November, so even October, November of 2018, it was only 21% of the BTC trading, while the USD had 50%, and now it's spiked up. And anybody that's looked at the greater financial markets and paid any attention to Japan knows that they've kind of been, we'll say, the market's been really controlled since the late 80s, I believe, early 90s, when they had a couple of market crashes, and then the central bank just went to town and was like, we're buying. I think central bank owns more than the GDP of Japan. They own more of the Japanese stock market than, I think it's the Nikkei index, than like the GDP of Japan. So it's completely controlled and manipulated. And not to mention that they're having a much older population, and the younger people in Japan aren't having as many children, so the population's aging. There's not enough people on the younger side to take care of and pay for what the care that's needed for the older upper generations. And that's becoming a problem, especially when you talk about debt, right? They need to roll that older debt over onto the younger workers, but there's fewer of them. So I think Japan's market is really one of the first to really be turning over and kind of need to fall into and embrace cryptocurrencies. And I think that's kind of what you're seeing with this. A lot of the older money or big money that has a lot is starting to go into cryptos because they want to get in while it's low, get in early, and ride this wave as it goes up and a new system's kind of established. See what's changed. In December, Bitcoinist reported that Asia claimed it has more impact on the Bitcoin price than America and Europe. The study cited major developments from Asia concerning cryptocurrencies, which had impacted the market by an average of 18.61%. They are indeed moving fast and east. Just a couple of weeks ago, one of Japan's largest cryptocurrencies exchange, Coincheck, was registered with the financial service agency in Japan. Additionally, a new partnership was formed with Blockstream, Digital Garage, and Tokyo Tanshi, which all serve the Japanese Bitcoin market by launching a JPY pegged stablecoin. Blockstream is one of the major players just in the crypto space. Again, they're connected with Coinbase and the digital currency group, and they have quite a few of the Bitcoin core developers are with Blockstream. So, like, they're making inroads here. You got Japan to launch a blockchain payment experiment for the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. I don't know. Can you think of a better world stage to really roll out cryptocurrencies to the masses than at the Olympics? I know that the viewership of the Olympics has died down in recent years, but the fact that it's going to be in Tokyo in 2020 and they're going to start rolling it out there in Japan is a big deal to me. And you're even talking about Japan's cash problem down here. Despite its reputation for world-leading technology and innovation in many areas, Japan's financial system remains a stubborn holdout, in part due to the stubborn cultural preferences for paying in cash for goods and services. Japanese citizens are the world's most prolific users of physical cash, with the cost running the country's 200,000 strong ATM network, along with cash registers and bullion vans, estimated at $18 billion annually. Again, this is another point I wanted to talk about. I've thought about just the efficiency side of cryptocurrencies and how much it costs to make cash and money, distribute it, make sure it's not counterfeit and stuff, all that. What is really happening with our world in debt with no money is like trying to get efficient. We're going to start cutting costs, and how do you start cutting out the inefficiencies, the excesses, and things like this $18 billion that it costs to make cash and deliver it to the different ATMs around Japan is an issue. And yeah, we can get into the concerns of completely cashless society that's controlled by the banks and stuff. And that's why I'm pushing to get cryptocurrencies out there and people onto them that aren't controlled by the banks before a system that they completely control is there, so that we can prevent that ability of them to control. So trying to get people on before. But there's clearly, and I read a story that was happening in Germany, I believe, the armored vehicle drivers were having a strike asking for higher wages. And to me, that was almost like they're hurting, like directing people as if they're animals towards cryptocurrencies. In my opinion, on a bigger level, they're starting to cut things. They'll have bank outages, certain credit card networks didn't work a few days in like London and England last year. They're trying to get into the people's minds that this system isn't really that sustainable and push people towards a more digital cash society. And I think Japan is one of the big places. Here's another one too, Line, which is a big like chat network and stuff like that over there. Line Corporation, the operator of the popular smartphone digital wallet service Line Pay, announced today that it plans to introduce in Japan the Line Copay brand card Visa in partnership with Visa, a global payment solution, obviously. So they're going to be rolling out a Visa branded Line credit card over in Japan. So this is just one of the stories that I found over the last week or two. It's just Japan, 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 adoption Japan, and like, and what I'm being aware of is that there's something interesting happening, and it's not being really discussed. But it seems like the uptick in adoption over in Japan and China is starting to increase. Here in the United States, you're even getting some bills starting to be passed, but the government's overall kind of holding people back. But imagine they're allowing the U.S. to be held back so that other countries can start the adoption and get it established first. Because then when the U.S. and Americans start really buying it, the Americans' wealth that we've kind of taken from a lot of these other countries flows out into the cryptos and lifts these other boats. So that's what's on my mind lately. That's what I think we need to be aware of, and just keep an eye on the developments that are going on in Japan and China. And that's your crypto awareness for this evening.